Today we're going to try to put main bearings in this 383 while the engine's still in the car. We did the rod bearings in the last video. If you'd like to check that out, they're all in and torqued. They were fairly simple and easy to get at. Main bearings are gonna probably pose maybe a little bit more of a challenge. I just want to say before we get started, main bearings are going to come one without a hole and one with a hole. The one with the hole has to go into the block. That's how oils, and this one here will go into the cap. Let's get started. We'll go ahead and start with the thrust bearing. Means that's the most difficult to do with the engine in the car, and we'll show you the procedure for that, and we'll go through the toughest one first, and hopefully everything goes all right. Kind of nice out here in the shade. Chance I could fall asleep if I had a pillow. Okay. Oh, the crank looks good there too. Now we'll get that upper bearing out. And I'm not going to go on the side with the tab, obviously. You can't push that around. And this is the thrust one. So I'm going to get right there and just see if I can start to drive that around softly. Like that. I'm going to try. I put a slight bend in that nail like that. Can you see that? Just a slight bend. So it lays more flush. I always find that the nail works better on the thrust one. With the sidewalls, there's just a little bit more resistance to try to get it to turn around. The nail just does it effortlessly. And see that? It's driving that bearing right out of there. See it? There it comes. And once we get this out of here, we'll do a good job spraying some brake cleaner up and around in there to get everything clean. And a real good idea is to take out your spark plugs. That way you don't have all that compression that you're hearing. My. And I'm being careful I don't go through and scratch the crank. You know, that's kind of important. There we go. The top parts of the bearing look really good, honestly. There is, right where that full groove was, a slight little thing there I can feel, but it's really smooth where that groove isn't. But overall, it looks good. Probably if the crank was out, you could polish it and, you know, spiff it up a little better. But remember, the one with the hole goes at the top. Put the tab on the opposite side, so when you rotate it around, the tab is in the tab groove. Remember, I pull that nail out. I've already pulled the nail out. And we got to try to get this to slide up around in there, if we can. And keep in mind, because this is the thrust bearing, now with it out, the crank can kind of walk back and forth. So to get that to start it, you might have to move your crank just a hair back or forth, a thousandth or two. Like that. See how I did that? It didn't want to slide. I had to just take this on this saddle and just kind of slide that crank forward a little bit to get that to start, because the thrust is a little bit more tricky because you got the sides of the thrust bearing. There, now it just slips right around like so. Easy enough, huh? This is the tricky part. You don't want to score nothing. There it goes. and in place. We got our plastic gauge in here. And remember to put it on. All the numbers are on the same side. Make sure our plastic gauge didn't move. It's okay. We're going to put it up in there. Tap it into place. You can hear when it's up against there. We'll drive it up in there and take it off and see what we got. And now we'll punch her in at 85 and then take her off. And we'll see what we got.
We ended up with about 2.5 thousandths clearance on the thrust bearing, and that's just a little looser than I like. I like the mains a little tighter.
Anyways, for the plastic gauge, after you put it in there and tighten it up, it'll flatten out, it'll smush. And then you just measure the distance. Each one of these gaps represent like a 1 thousandths, 1.5 thousandths, 2 thousandths, 3 thousandths. And that's just pretty simple. I did, just for the main bearings, unscrew this pickup tube, oil pickup tube, to get it out of my way.
Here we got another one off. I popped another cap off, cleaned it up, and we're going to go ahead and plastic gauge that one as well, and we'll see where this one here ends up.
With a clean bearing surface, I'm just going to try to slip this around. I got the end with no tab starting into the end of the block where the tab will end up. I had to put the camera down to push it up in there with two hands, but now you can see it's up in there, hopefully. Now we're going to put the cap on, all dry with the plastic gauge. We're going to torque it down and see what we got.
Apologize, I messed up with the camera. I thought I was recording when I measured the plastic gauge, but I wasn't. Anyways, we ended up with about almost 2 thousandths clearance on this is how it measured.
So I'm fighting the shade. So we'll put on a nice dose of engine assembly lube and get her torqued out. So we got this torqued to 85. Number 4 main is done. I always take a flashlight and just make sure that the bearings are seated up against the block. You know, when I tap it in there, and once it's up seated against the block, I got a little WD-40 in the threads. I put that in there, just a little WD-40 in the threads to make sure everything's clean going in. We got these two done, and I'm just doing the same thing on all of them. This one here will be easy to get at, and the one back one, I'll just have to take off that main seal cap to do that one. The tough one's going to be this front one here, because I don't got any space between the K-frame and the crank. I may have to raise up the engine in the front, loosen the two motor mount bolts, and raise it up with a jack so I can get at that front one, if I even do it. All right, we're back out here again today. To get at these two main cap bolts, I need to take off this. This is the retainer for the rear main seal, and that usually is torqued about 30. I think I'm using a 12.38, is it? Or did I guess wrong? It's a 12.38, and I just broke these loose, and now I'm just gonna go like this and remove these. And this doesn't make me very fond of what I'm doing right now, because the rear main seal was not leaking in this. So our goal is to make sure it doesn't leak again when we put it back together. So a little RTV on the sides, and you know, it should be like new. To get this out, I just got to stick a like a punch in there and just kind of wiggle it out and break it loose. We'll get it out. Like this, I just stuck the screwdriver in there, broke it loose, move it back, and here it comes. Rear main seal. With the bolts out, we'll just give it a little tap like that. And then we'll just grab it with our channel locks and pull her out. We'll finish using the screwdriver to push this around. Like so. And that's the top one. And we got it. And here's what we just pulled out. Number 5 main bearing is in and torqued down. Now we just got to put reseal up our retainer cap for our rear main seal. Hopefully that won't leak. I put just a thin layer of this ultra black gasket maker RTV up and around here and up on this side and around here. I put some red grease on the seal. I did not remove the seal. I didn't take it out. I'm hoping everything just goes back like it was, guys, with no leaks. Trying. And we got the retainer back in, and hopefully it don't leak. That torqued to 30. I just used my field torque. Not that I advise it. Okay, raining. I worked with the weather. I did put the socket on the front bolts of the front main, number 1 main. I'm able to get it on there. I'm going to be able to break it loose. You get the idea of how to put bearings in, don't you? With the motor being in the car. If I come out, it's always got to rain. I don't know. Anyways, I got to clean up. You get the gist. Bearings in, motor. See ya.